Everyone, welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I'm so delighted to have you all join us today. I'm really excited. I have a very good friend on the show that I'm going to introduce you to in just a moment. But thank you for sharing your time with us. It matters a great deal to me that you are here and that you have chosen this time to be with us. So thank you so much. And I want to say hi to Amnon. Are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
How are you?
I'm just fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
How,
As always.
How has your week been?
So far, so good.
No.
It's beautiful out, and I rested a lot yesterday, man. I must have really needed that rest because I slept.
We worked hard yesterday.
You did?
Outside.
Outside. Well, I worked hard inside sleeping.
No.
And it was good, good. So anyway, listen, as always, we love when you connect with us during the show. So please remember, anytime during the show, you can call in at 919-518-9773 if you have a phone. And if you don't and you want to connect through Skype voice, you can do that as well. So wherever you are in the world, you are more than welcome to connect with us. And you can connect on Skype at computers, that's plural, the number 2K voice. And also, we have a chat window, a live chat window that you can put your name, nickname, whatever you like, right next to the video and enter into the chat and, communicate with us from there. There's other people in there, so it's always fun and engaging. So with that, every week I do a Google Plus Hangout called Skywire, which is always about listening. And actually, we're about at our year anniversary coming up right now, next week, and we've done, 40 some odd shows. And I think the very first show I did, somehow these two women showed up. I don't know how they did. I didn't know who they were. I had no inkling what I was doing. Somebody said, Marilyn, do a show on Google Plus. I said, okay. So I got some kind of equipment, hooked it up, pressed the button, and swallowed my nerves and just went and did it. And one of these women is this beautiful, creative soul called Katrina. And I love her passionately. She's an empath. She's a creative consultant, coach, and she speaks such wisdom. And I'm so delighted to bring her here today and introduce her to all of you. So with that, let's welcome Katrina. Hey, how you doing? I'm not sitting here clapping.
I feel great, Marilyn. After an intro like that, I'm going to be on a high for a week. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much.
Good. Everybody should be on a high.
Yeah. But it really was great that we sort of got started on that adventure at the same time, because I had actually never been a regular panelist on a show before. So, you were starting your show and I was like, hey, I have to get a little bit more comfortable with being on camera a lot. So it was actually a great fit for both of us. I think it was perfect.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that are just meant to be.
Yeah, and I think listening is such an integral part of not only being, in touch with your creative self, but also really learning about who you are and about how to operate in the world. If you're not really listening all that well, you can't really be creative in the ways that your heart is calling you to be because you're blocking it out.
Absolutely. So you are this creative being and you are an empath. So why don't we start by describing what it is that an empath is? Like, what's an empath?
Sure. In my personal experience, an empath has a heightened sense of emotional connection with others, meaning that if I'm in a room with other people, I can just feel what they're feeling. I have a very clear sense of their emotional state, sort of their struggle. It doesn't mean I can read their mind. It just means that from an emotional standpoint, I can kind of pick up on if they're anxious or if they're frustrated or sort of their emotional state in the moment. I didn't realize that's what I was doing from when I was really little. So I grew up in my life feeling like, hey, I guess I'm just an anxious person, or I'm just this, because the emotions that I was feeling were actually not even mine. So that was an interesting adventure to go on. But over the last 10 years, I'm finally figuring out how to use that skill in a different way. I didn't realize how much I was relying on it as a writer. Because when you're connecting with people, the empathic part of me is able to listen under the surface. So even though I know what they're trying to say with their words, I can actually also feel the emotional state of what they're sharing. I can really tap into that, and that allows me to not only, be a little bit more supportive in the creative coaching that I do, but also, helping them share their voice. We all have an important voice to share, and as an empath, I didn't realize how much those skills were actually helping with my writing skills as well.
So you can tell when somebody's also holding back?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I think it's sort of, it's this place where, I'll give you a very silly example. There are times, like, I don't really drink a lot anymore, but if I'm in a bar next to someone that's had a few drinks, I can start to feel a little tipsy. Like, for me, it really is that specific and that sensitive. But I wanted to kind of point out that we actually all have an empathic ability. It's just mine's turned on, like the valves turned all the way on. So you use your empathic skills maybe for listening or in other ways, but we all have them. Mine just happen to show up as being able to emotionally feel other people. For other folks, it maybe they can feel and hear or sense. It's sort of an interesting dynamic to play with, because it doesn't necessarily show up the same in all folks.
I see. Because I do feel like I am an empath as well. I mean, I never looked at it that way, never talk about it that way, but I can feel people, and if I focus and listen, listen more, tune in more, then I'm going to experience it, more. And I know that everybody gives off energy, and we can feel each other's energy, 8 to 10 feet away from somebody. Now, is that common for you, or do you feel people's energy further away?
Oh, I can feel people's energy further away. Like, even say if you called me on the phone, and even if you didn't necessarily tell me that you were upset about something, I'd be able to tell. So it doesn't necessarily mean I have to be in their physical proximity. But this past weekend, I was at like a barbecue event, and I met someone new, and he kept trying to step into my space. Like, he was a close talker, let's just put it that way. And that was really hard for me. I felt like as much as I was trying to back up, he was getting closer, and I was just trying to create more space because I was just sort of feeling his emotional state so closely, which can be a little bit unnerving when you don't really know the person. It wasn't bad by any means, it's just it was a little intense. So in social situations, it definitely is stronger for me, and I have to be mindful of that.
And what do you do when it's feeling very strong? I mean, how do you have to take a lot of time outs? What do you do?
Yeah, I'll take some breaks. I'll kind of go for a little walk. Maybe if it's a party, I'll kind of just take a lap or two, go to the restroom. I know that for some people, they do sort of an energy block or defense system before they go out, and that you can do some things as well that get you grounded before you leave the house, and kind of surround yourself like in a bubble of pink light, like you're surrounded in love, for example. I don't always remember to do those kinds of things, but if more than anything else, I have to be really mindful of clearing my energy when I get home, because I feel like what ends up happening for me is that people's stuff just kind of gets stuck to my energy field a little easier. So I'm more mindful of being clearing that space when I get home, because I feel that if I'm getting really defensive before I leave the house, then I'm actually missing parts of information that would be important for me to know about a person, if that makes sense.
So you are this huge creative being. What came first to your awareness? Was it being an empath, or was it being creative?
I would say it was being a writer, because that was a tangible thing that I got feedback for. Like, I come from a family that isn't really very in touch with their emotions, so they fight them a lot. And that was a little bit challenging because I think I was carrying a lot for them without realizing it. So for me, when I was in school, I had this amazing 5th grade teacher, and she did this exercise where each of the people, all the students in the class, had to write what they thought or what they felt about another student in the class, which, 5th grade, that's hard to do. It's such an awkward age. People feel uncomfortable even expressing their emotions, let alone to other students in the class. But the idea was that if you were the student that was chosen that month, you go out in the hallway, and then the teacher would talk to the other people in the class, and then you had to write an assignment about how you felt connected to this person or what you felt about this person. And I think that when I started doing those exercises, that's when she saw I was empathic, because it came out through my writing, if that makes sense. Because I would write things about students that someone in 5th grade probably wouldn't be able to sense or understand, and I was able to do it regardless of whether I knew the person well or not. So she was the first person that really encouraged me to kind of look at that a little bit better, because she encouraged me through my writing more so, like a more linear way versus the emotional way, if that makes sense.
And did she name it, identify it as being an empath, or she just said, "Oh wow, Katrina, you can really feel other people's feelings"?
She called me out a few times and made me read what I had written in front of the class.
Wow.
So I think that's when I started putting it together, like, wow, she doesn't really do this for other people. And she would just make comments that sort of helped me put all these pieces together. Now, I can't tell you that I've realized all of this, when I was that age. It was the older that I got, and I realized like what a gift that was, even though I didn't really understand it at the time. When I was kind of doing my own reflective stuff in the last 10 years, when I was really on my personal journey to digging in deep for myself, I was like, wow, she was offering me this piece of information that I couldn't quite process, but I'm so glad that she did, because that's what started me on the path of actually wanting to write and sort of express myself in that way. And for me, if I'm collecting all these emotions, they got to go somewhere, right? I have to put them somewhere. And I feel that the writing has enabled me to express myself in a way that I didn't have the tools to do, and I hadn't learned to do up until that point. Mainly because I just didn't have a model for that.
So were you really, like, as a kid, just an emotional wreck before you realized that there was a reason why you were feeling all these emotions?
Well, it's interesting. Every empath processes their information in a different way, but for me, it always showed up as being sick. So I would be like, when you're looking at from an energetic standpoint, emotions that are unexpressed show up as stuffiness, congestion, respiratory issues. So I had all of that. So it kind of showed up in a more physical sense, and was really frustrating because, I was going for allergy shots and I was having all of this. People would always be like, oh, well, I know you're sick, you can't do this. It sort of like developed this persona that it's like, oh, well, I was not as strong as other people because I was kind of sickly, if that makes sense. But it was this emotional burden that I was carrying around that I had no tools to release. So it just kept manifesting and showing up as physical things so that I could release it, so my body could get rid of it.
It's so interesting to me because giving it the word, being an empath, kind of makes it even special. Because I always feel like, well, people can read and feel other people's feelings. A mother can tell when something's wrong with their child, or a child can tell. Like, I was talking to my mother today, and I said, and I could just the tone of her voice. Now, why? I mean, it just seems like everybody can do that. Right?
They tune it out. Marilyn, they tuned it out.
So you say you're an empath. Are you saying I'm an empath? Are you saying that I am saying I'm an empath, you're all an empath, but I am identifying myself as this and everybody can too? Or are you saying it's stronger for you, or what? Tell me.
Yeah, like I was mentioning earlier in the show, for me, that faucet is turned all the way on. It's a part of how I self-identify, and it's also part of, now that I really understand what it is and that it's a skill that I have, I'm able to integrate it and use it. It's on, everyone's got it. It's just that maybe their valve is turned down way low because they're really kind of stuck in their mental space, and they aren't necessarily using that space to operate with their empathy in as a tool, if that makes sense. So we all have it. It's just not everybody knows how to turn it on, or how they've actually over the years decided to turn it off because they've just been sort of emotionally overwhelmed.
So that's a really great way to express it. Beautiful way. And we have somebody on the chat, Cindy, is saying, it's hard for me to know at times what my feelings are. So is that in direct relation to, being, picking up other people's stuff?
Yes. I would definitely say that's one of the first indicators that you need a grounding process to kind of clear out extra energy, but also that, you're probably picking up other people's stuff because it's messing with your own energy field. You aren't able to really tell the difference. And it's really critical for empaths to have that sort of process. And it doesn't have to be something complicated if you're not super into energy. Just going for a walk or identifying what certain things that you can do that help you get grounded again will bring you back to your own emotional state and be like, not really sure why this is clinging to me. I don't think it's mine.
Right.
I think it's really important to be mindful of that, and I'm glad that she brought that up, because that is one of the first indicators that we're a little bit off balance.
It's called I think it's called the Teflon effect.
Mm-hmm.
Be like Teflon. Don't let it stick.
I always, you know what I like to do sometimes, and this might be helpful. If you're a visual person, this might be helpful. I basically picture myself on the inside of a disco ball. So it's like all the mirrors are facing outwards and reflecting all of everybody else's stuff back to themselves, essentially. Because if you really look at how we're supposed to show up as people in this world, we are mirrors for each other. That's what we do. I couldn't be doing the work or some of the things that I'm doing if I wasn't interacting with you in a certain way, right? Because we've come together and this is how we've decided to reflect for each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important for people that are empaths to realize, like, yes, it's a reflection, but it doesn't mean you have to take on everyone else's burden and carry that around with you. It's important to know the difference. Yeah.
And how do you, and I want to get into a lot of the creativity part because that's really enticing. Mm-hmm. But so how do you do that though? How do you really find yourself how do you find your emotion in this sea of emotion? How do you know what's yours and what's somebody else's?
Mm-hmm. I think it starts with a practice. Do you have a grounding meditative practice that you do every day? Are you going for walks? Are you exercising? Like, what foods are you eating? What are you using to actually get grounded every day? And then you start to take note, okay, when I've done with this process and I feel really clear in myself, this is what this feels like. Because I think what ends up happening is we try to think our way through it, and you have to feel it. You have to feel like when I'm really grounded and feel good about myself, this is what this feels like for me. And then you start to notice, like, hey, after I hang out with this person or I do this activity in this group of people, I start to feel a little off. So it's about that monitoring process. I do think journaling about it can help because it sort of helps you to start to keep track of, like, hey, when I did this is how it felt. When I stepped into this piece, this is how it felt. And I also would suggest people read some books. I wish I could say that I knew a ton of books off the top of my head, but there is one for highly sensitive people that's really good about explaining how to work through different processes. But I think more than anything else, it's honoring the fact that you might need space. Mm-hmm. If you're showing up and you really feel off and it goes on like that for a few days and there isn't really any specific cause, most likely it's some energy that you've been holding on to that isn't even yours. I have to say myself this weekend, I went to that barbecue that I was explaining. I was busy doing other things this weekend. I wasn't really home a lot. And then I was feeling it yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I didn't take the time to really clear out my chakras, clear out that energy. And it can even be as simple as saying, I just release anything that isn't mine, and just be mindful of how that feels. I could go into more complex energy work, but that's because I'm a Reiki master and that's a little bit different level of explanation.
Well, everything and anything is possible here. But I think that I think that a lot. So and I have a really good couple of questions on the chat that I want to get to. But I think what I'm understanding is, you tell me, do you feel that a lot of the emotional issues that people go through is because they're picking up somebody else's? Is that a lot of the time what happens?
I think any time that you aren't in love with yourself in that way, it's a reflection to show you, like, hey, I have a choice point. Is this something in myself that I want to heal, or am I picking up someone else's stuff? Mm-hmm. Because I think when you feel uncomfortable, that's your own internal system of saying, you have a couple different things that could be going on. Let's get to the bottom of it. So sometimes it really is that deeper part of you that is coming up for healing, and you need to pay attention to that. And in that case, that is your stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you're picking up other people's emotional states, then that's something different altogether. I think it's just, to me, it always comes down to feeling, because as an empath, that's how I identify. Right.
Because I'm so from the feeling. I mean, yep. I was going to say something about being the difference between it being an introvert and being an extrovert, because I've always been, I guess, brought up to believe, or grew up to believe, that I was an extrovert. Mm-hmm. But I also think that, maybe being an introvert, I think I'm both, obviously I'm in the middle, but I think go ahead. I was
going to say, I'm so glad that you said that, because I do think that's a really big indicator as well. You even, before the show started, you said, I took all yesterday to sleep, right? You slept, you had a really nice day to relax and sleep yesterday because you needed to catch up.
And I don't do that. That is so rare for me. I walk around like, what's wrong with me? I'm sleeping. Why am I sleeping?
Oh my God. see, I'm so glad that you asked that question too, because I think that's what people, when they have this out of the ordinary sort of emotional feeling or experience, they're like, what's wrong with me? It's the first question that they ask, instead of saying, wow, am I carrying around someone else's stuff that's maybe not mine? Or do I just need rest? Like, they judge it the minute that it comes up. So it's really important to get into that listening phase, because I know that you're obviously a huge proponent of listening, but we really do have to call on that skill quite a bit, because it can, all of those emotional things can get mushed together really easily. The practice becomes waking up every day and saying, okay, when I go through these emotional states, can I just give myself that time to have a little more awareness? Can I give myself that today? Because it's not about the judgment as much as it's just trying to decipher the information. So for me, over time, I know, okay, when I'm with this person, I'm triggered, right? And that could be some of my shadow stuff that's coming up, or it could just be that when I'm around them, they realize that it's easy to kind of just foosh their energy my way, for example. So all of this comes down to a very complex process of listening for me in my experience, because the two are so entwined. I don't think it's necessarily as challenging for everyone. But the more that you can be aware of, like, okay, I'm supposed to be an extrovert, but I have introvert tendencies, or I'm supposed to be an introvert, but I have extrovert tendencies, or however that works together for you, those are just indicators of self-care, right?
Yeah.
You can be an extrovert and still need a lot of time alone.
Well, I think it's growth. I think it's maturity and growth. I think I grew up, feeling, kind of have this extrovert thing going on, but the more I grow, the more I kind of sway a little into more towards the middle, and I pick up my introvert tendencies. And yesterday was one of those days where I just needed to sleep. And then I think introverts who can get overwhelmed easily and are sensitive to, can come more in towards the middle. But I want to go into some of these questions before we move on to creativity, because we have some. And Stephanie is in our chat, and she says, before you leave this topic that we're talking about, can I ask what specifically you do to clear other people's energy off of yourself? So it's a
great question. I actually do it through an envisioning of cutting cords, if that makes any sense to you. There's a couple different books and exercises, even if you look them up online, around cutting cords, but I really just kind of do it in a very simple way, where I actually have a cord that comes down from my waist and make sure that I'm grounded. So I'm envisioning like a color that I want to be grounded into the earth, right? So if I'm like, okay, what color is going to come to me today? Maybe sometimes it's green, sometimes it's red, but I envision it coming from my hips and going all the way down to the center of the earth. So I'm sort of grounded in that sense. And then I sort of envision an energy cord coming in the other direction. So it's coming from, up above. And so once I know that I'm grounded in that way, so I'm centered and balanced, then I kind of look, it's kind of hard. I guess I could kind of demonstrate it because I am on camera. You can kind of like collect all the cords that are in front of you like this in like a bundle, and then just cut them, pretend that you're cutting them. And then I feel that if I envision that violet flame kind of like erasing all of that energy, it helps quite a bit. And I do that for the front of me and the side of me and the back of me and the other side. So it's like the 4 sides.
And do you do that on a regular basis?
I do.
Yes. Not just when you're feeling over emotion.
No, that's why I was telling you that story just shortly earlier. Like, I did not do that. I went out and I did my stuff this weekend, and then I was running around, then I got into the garden, and I was doing other stuff, and then I didn't do that. And by yesterday, I was really feeling it. So I pretty much, if I'm going to be out and about with other people during the day, I make sure I do that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
At night. Yeah. Or even if, like, say, Marilyn, I know you do a lot of networking, right? You're around a lot of people at one particular event. Maybe it's in the middle of the afternoon. Well, why wait to the evening to do that? If you have a couple minutes, why not just clear that out for yourself and go on with the rest of your day? Because it does build up. Like, you don't really, maybe it doesn't feel off at first, but then when you get to the end of the day, you're like, wow, I feel like crap.
It's so interesting because sometimes, I have to, like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I feel like I need to take a 10-minute or a 15-minute, and I'll either pull over to the side of the road, and I never really connected it before I always connected it to coming home from school at 3 o'clock, to coming home and being tired. But there might be more to it than just that, because it happens to me, on a regular basis. So it might be something connected to, taking on, what's going on around me, really.
Yeah.
Because
And
I
you can
always have
also,
to do it.
yeah, exactly.
So
But
don't
how,
call
it's
me
like,
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm taking a nap.
but how great it is that you're mindful of it. And to answer, to give one other option or suggestion, you can also listen to a chakra balancing meditation, because I feel that sometimes that can help people too if they don't want to necessarily do the physical act, like pretending to cut cords and things like that. I do find that a chakra balancing meditation can help in some ways. So if you just want to take a little bit of a break and listen to that, as part of your day, that can help clear things out as well. But I would strongly encourage anyone that's interested in that kind of stuff to definitely do some research online, because there's some great insight, and they can go into much more detail than I can on the show right now at the moment. But I just kind of gave you the quick and dirty option,
Sure.
to see if that can be helpful.
And I think it's the awareness.
Yeah.
I think it's being aware that we're all this, and maybe we haven't given this enough of our attention. We're
Right.
focusing out to say or something that there's something wrong with us, as opposed to maybe there's something really right with us. This is all part of this universal idea, philosophy that we're all connected,
Yeah, you're getting information.
right?
If you can
Yeah.
think of your physical body as just another way to get information, that when it feels off, it's telling you something. It's just your job to figure out, okay, am I going to overthink it? Or am I going to create a practice and a process around it, so that every day when I start feeling off, I can just kind of go through this and then see how I feel? Because if you do an energy clearing process and you still feel off, it may be something that you're personally clearing, like an old shadow piece, some older energy that no longer suits you. Like there's something else on the flip side of that too. So the best way to work around that is to know that you have a process that you use every day to get grounded and clear.
Absolutely. So I want to just take a minute and remind you all that I'm going through the chat, and I'm going to go one by one and answer, or have Katrina answer some of the questions. But feel free, if you're listening now and you want to take part in the chat, to put your name in the little line, nickname, your real name, whatever you like, and you could be in the chat as well, or you can call us with your question to 919-518-9773. Or if you choose and you're somewhere in Timbuktu and you don't have a phone, feel free to connect with us on Skype. That'll be voice. So call into computers, that's plural, the number 2, voice. And we'd love to hear from you all.
Yes.
And that was a great question, Stephanie, so thank you for bringing that up. Then Chris wants to know, what is the difference between boundaries and being and being an empath?
I'm not sure if there's a difference between them, in as much as that they have to go hand in hand, right? So, Marilyn, your personal boundaries would be different than mine, let's say, in terms of how much time I want to spend with other people, the kind of tasks I want to do, the energy level that I'm okay with dedicating to those kinds of things, and saying no. Because I think this, we're always trying to interpret boundaries as something that we're doing in a physical sense, but as we already talked about, energy is all through all space and time. It's not just in your physical reality. So is there someone that's a client maybe, or a person that you're dealing with online that's sort of draining your energy and asking you to do a lot of things, or it's hard for you to say no? So in terms of the boundary piece, I think it's important for you to get clear on, like, these are things that I'm willing to do, and these are things I'm not willing to do, because to me that's being really clear with yourself and knowing who you are. And also understand that those boundaries are going to change over time. So what was okay for you 2 months ago may not be okay for you anymore. And you can feel free to change that. As far as empaths go, for me, I have to be much clearer with my boundaries, because before I didn't have a model for that, and I just kind of didn't. I guess what I'm saying is that, as sensitive as I was, I needed boundaries, and I wasn't sure how to create them. So I think that with empaths specifically, they have to understand that they're well within their right to do that and say no, but also create boundaries that feel safe for you. You don't do them to make everyone else feel better. It's for you to feel clear and to feel safe and say, yes, this time is for me. This is my space. This is what I need, and not worry about what someone's going to say if they don't agree.
I'm loving the idea. I'm going to take on, now I'm going to be able to call myself an empath. Seriously, and I love the idea of having that as a container, as, an understanding. It's not like a label of, sometimes you see labels on TV. If you have, restless leg syndrome, take this pill. It's not, it's right. It's not about that, but it does make sense on how I engage, and I think it makes sense a lot about how a lot of people are feeling. That it's natural for people
Yeah.
to feel bad when you're taking on a lot of the energy that's around you, and understanding that, and loving yourself enough to know that it's not all you, right? And that you
Yeah.
can do some things like you visualizing your chord, somebody else visualizes something else. It would be interesting to see what people do to
Mm-hmm.
some people take a sage thing and they squish around
Mm-hmm.
themselves and clean up the energy. you know
Yep.
I mean, there are lots of really cool things that people can do. So okay, so Chris wants to know, what is the shadow stuff?
Ah, shadow stuff. Well, we all come into the world with some pieces that we want to heal. And so when you're bumping up against other people or you're feeling friction with people, sometimes really what's happening is that it's not necessarily that they're dumping their energy on you. It's just they're triggering your shadow stuff on the inside, which is just things that you haven't accepted about yourself. It's not that it's bad or negative or that it's going to hurt you in some way. It's just that's our perception of it. So we feel that if we go there and really dig into that, then there's a fear that we're not sure what's going to happen. We don't know how to handle it. It brings up our darky, secrety, fear kinds of things. But in order for you to show up as a full, balanced person, you do have the dark and the light. That's how things balance out. It's yin yang too. Male female energy. There's always that balance. And the more that you can actually tune in to, okay, this stuff is definitely mine. Like you've already gone through the process. You're like, I'm pretty clear it's not someone else's, but it's mine. That's the invitation to really go in there, because you want to know what? It's where all the creative goodies are too. It's not necessarily just that the shadow stuff is the fear. It's also where your creative edge is how you're going to shape yourself as a person, how you're going to grow as a person. All of that is in the shadow place, but it's about opening up to it and not being afraid of it, which is the practice part. We aren't born knowing how to do that, but we were born without realizing that we had a shadow. So it's about sort of remembering that in the whole picture, you're fine, you're okay, you've got some things that you need to heal, and it's important to look at those when they come up, because it's like an onion and they aren't going to come up all at once.
So that's you, and I'm going to go into some of these other questions and things, or comments actually, but that's where we're going to go with Katrina in a minute, is to talk about the yummy stuff in the shadow stuff and the creativity stuff. And that's what she does, right? That's what you help people do, is to get into the yummy stuff. Like we talked
Yeah.
about the gaps last week, right?
Yep.
In the yummy stuff. So hold on, don't go anywhere. But there are some very interesting things on the chat that I want to acknowledge. So Cindy says that she doesn't, and this is really brilliant, that she doesn't have to be around someone to know what they're feeling. No, you
Yep.
don't. If you're tapped into someone, you're going to feel it. And she was at work Friday night when around 3 a.m. She had so much anger and she didn't know what was going on. But it turns out that her best friend, Samantha, was in an argument at the same time. So does that happen to you, Katrina?
Oh, yeah. I can definitely feel when people are wanting to talk with me, or if I haven't heard from them in a while, but they'll start popping into my mind. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you said that, Cindy, because, you could have been internalizing that and making that about you, but you realize that, hey, this is a person that you love and care for and you're very tapped into. So yes, it's very, very possible at any point to feel that, especially at weird times of the night, which must have been a little weird for you, a little
Yeah,
unnerving,
really.
right?
But I guess that's the gift, in
Yeah.
knowing in those moments what could be going on so bad that you would be so angry with yourself. I mean,
Well,
maybe.
exactly.
Go ahead. Yeah. So those are indicators that it's not you, right, Katrina?
Yes, very sudden emotional changes that you don't understand, and you there are no explanations or reasons for. And if you think about it in the bigger scheme of things, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, if we really are moving towards an energy where we're connected and more aware of that connectedness between all of us, it just makes sense, right? It makes sense that our empathy levels are going to start increasing, because energetically as a planet we're all moving in that direction too.
So does trauma wake up your sensitivity? I mean, what does jive this thing to kind of to into being? Is there something?
I think that as an empath, the trauma part can shut you down a little bit because you don't want to be that open and exposed again. So it does take a process to sort of reorient yourself with the fact that it's okay to feel. Because I do know that maybe at a younger age, if some folks have had, a negative experience or something that's affected them in that way, that does cause them to shut down. I had a friend that I'm not really friendly with her anymore, but she told me that she introduced me to someone else as the person that always makes people cry, which I thought was really interesting. But it's just because as an empath, I can relate to like, okay, this person needs to be communicated to in this way because I know I can sense what they've already been through and this works for them. So when you're looking at the traumatic experiences, I'm able to tune into what those might have been for a person so I can communicate to them in a way that's actually going to land, that they can actually hear me and understand. And I think that as an empath, that's what's really important too. It's not just the sensing, it's, okay, now you have the information, how are you using it? Are you using it in a positive way? Are you taking it on? Are you using it maliciously? Like there's all these other elements to it. But I do think people that are empaths and have had somewhat of a traumatic event, it takes them a little time to want to own that part of them again and get back into that.
Right. Well, and then Stephanie says that her 30-year-old stepson has been having some suicidal ideations. And I haven't felt right ever since I hugged him about 3 weeks ago.
Yep. Yeah. If there's a way that you can clear some of that energy out, or, maybe go just to a Reiki master or get a healing session, I think that would be really helpful for you. Mm-hmm. And good awareness. I mean, that's the step one, right? You're acknowledging the fact that, like, hey, this is definitely not mine. And I think it's important to find the right healing modality to help.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. That you can make the connection between one and the other is a huge thing. And so that says a lot. And it doesn't say that you have to avoid something. It just means that you take good care of yourself, when you're in the midst of something. Okay, so now let's get into the creative part.
Yes.
Okay, so connect with me. Now talk about the creative part.
Well, the fun part about what I do is that I had to do it for myself. Because I was a person that was creative that didn't feel that they were able to express their creativity fully. That I wasn't really in tune with myself, so I would help people and work with other people for their writing, but it was very one-dimensional for me because I didn't realize, again, that I was using my empathic skills for that, but I was basically the ghostwriter behind everyone else. And I felt that over time, I was like, okay, well, that's a safe way to be, but I have a voice, and there are things that I want to share, and there are things that I want to create and express and do. And I wasn't really stepping out and doing those things because I was really kind of in my mind saying, well, that's not very practical. I have to do it this way in order to be successful, blah, blah, blah. I worked for IBM for about 4 years from home, just doing, technology writing. And I feel like that was sort of the end for me because it drained any last piece of creative freedom out of what I felt I was writing. So I think, in terms of looking at all of those experiences and then stepping away from that and saying, I really want to be able to guide and help people now that I have a better understanding of my intuitive skills and my healing skills and all these other pieces. How can I help people to get past these same blocks that I had myself? I didn't have a specific mentor. I always look at people in my life as mentors. So I'd kind of pick up pieces of information here and there from folks like, hey, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll incorporate that into my own healing. But really, ultimately, it was about that passion that I had to help other people really express themselves fully. Because I didn't feel that I was able to do that or had someone to help me do that.
So how do you do that? What are some of the steps? Like step 1, step 2, what do you do?
Well, it's a lot of different things, but I think ultimately it's about me connecting with a person and them explaining, say, hey, I'm having this challenge in my business, I'm having this challenge in my personal life. These are some things that aren't working for me, or I don't feel valued. Like whatever their current state is, I have an initial meeting with them, kind of get a sense of what what their expression, how they would express their own challenges, let's say. Because obviously at an intuitive level, I'm going to have a different read on what they may be mentally thinking is their challenge. So it's a lot of folks that either have writing blocks, are maybe in their career where they're like, everything feels okay, but I'm not really stepping into joy in what I do. Or they're at a choice point Also people that have maybe had a hidden creative talent but don't really see themselves that way. But more often than anything else, it's not even just necessarily about a specific creative ability as much as it's about, do you see yourself as providing value? You know, can you step into what your unique gifts are and share those? Because I think that's really what helps. It holds people back. It doesn't allow them to really fully express all of who they are. So in order to help them do that, I can provide coaching sessions. And part of that is, you know, empathic and intuitive material that I'd be using. I teach classes for that. I definitely walk them in terms of a coaching process, give them homework, but it's all very fine-tuned based on what I think their specific blocks are.
So you don't actually write for someone. You help somebody break free of of their writing blocks to get to, you know, break free. Right. Okay.
Up until this point, I would say up until very recently, I was still writing as a ghostwriter for other people, and I still do that on very special projects that are important to me. But I found that there's a lot more power in helping people really fine-tune the voice that they already have, and it gives them more confidence. So for example, I'll collaborate. We'll get on a video call, we'll bring up the document, and I actually co-create with them and show them where they're blocked in their own material, for example, for writing. For other folks, you know, they have more of an emotional block because either they are they're not understanding their own emotional path. They may be a little bit stuck with, you know, hey, I'm really in my mind. They don't have that self-care balance. So in that way, I'm actually giving them more coaching suggestions. So it really kind of just depends on where they need some help. But particularly, it's the entrepreneurs that really need some assistance in how they're presenting themselves. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you write, what you're feeling, all these other things come together in how you want to present yourself. And I don't think that people have that mirror sometimes. They don't have a mirror to reflect back to them all of their really unique, special gifts. And I'm able to do that. I sort of act as your mirror and say, okay, I know that you think you do this, but if I was going to be honest with you, I think that in terms of your gifts, you have this, this, and this. Because I don't think people can see that for themselves sometimes.
Right. I think it's hard to be, it's difficult to be, it's challenging to be objective. Mm-hmm. Even sometimes to acknowledge you have a gift.
Yep.
Right. And you would think that you would say that everybody has gifts.
Yeah.
Does everybody? Go ahead, say it.
Yeah, I was just to say, you know, just because you're an accountant and you work with numbers all day doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a creative gift with numbers. So to me, it's the definition. It's how we define creativity. It's like maybe you go home at night and you cook amazing meals for your family because that's your passion, that's your outlet. And so I think that there is a misconception sometimes that, well, if I can't make money with it, is it really a talent? Well, of course it is, right? Maybe some of your creative outlets that you're not experiencing are because you're neglecting the fact that you need that self-care. You know, maybe your creativity, that creative outlet that you have is actually more for your self-care than anything else, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not a creative ability, because maybe you sit in front of the TV and you knit, or you actually spend your free time going out and maybe connecting with other people that don't feel like they're in a good place. Like whatever it is that your gift is, to me, that is a creative gift that's special to you. It's not necessarily something that I would have or you would have, Marilyn, or someone else.
So how do you define creativity?
I think it's how do I explain it? I believe that creativity is the process of becoming yourself. Like, who are you really? And can you tap into what those gifts are and express them in a way that you feel free and comfortable to do that?
So to be creative, do you have to express it to somebody else?
I don't think so. It helps because then you feel a little bit more confident, but you know, as we all know as human beings, we don't have to share everything. There's enough reality TV out there. People airing their laundry
Absolutely. This is like reality TV.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, if you want to write poems, because that is something that I used to do when I was younger. I write poetry. Now, I don't necessarily share my poems all over the internet, but it doesn't mean I don't write them anymore. So I think it's just a matter of what way are you honoring your self-expression, whether you share it with someone else or not is your choice, but you're actually going through the act of honoring yourself and doing it.
So and in what way does creativity help you find yourself, or how do you find yourself through creativity that makes it so important?
To me, there's a lot of folks that go through the motions, right? I'm not saying that when you follow your passion, there aren't things that you have to do that maybe you don't love, but you can tell when someone's going through the motions and when they're really in tune with who they are. Because what you're attracted to about that person, all of these famous people that are doing what they love to do, it's because they're basically in their own creative process. And the more that you're able to experiment and feel, just step out there, even if you don't necessarily feel 100% confident in it, it allows you to experience like, yes, I'm going to feel fear. I'm going to feel these emotions, but I'm going to build courage and do it anyway. So to me, it's like if you can really get clear on what your creative gifts are, it sets the beacon out for you to follow and develop yourself as a person, if that makes sense.
So through creativity, we find our passion, our mission, our reason for being here.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. Are you doing the same things now that you were doing 10 years ago? Maybe.
On some level, some of it, yes.
Yeah.
Some of it hasn't changed. Most of it,
Yeah.
That's a good question, actually. Some of it, I'm doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah, so some of those things, that your passion has kind of drawn you through those same things into expanding into other things. But maybe there's at some point in your life where you're like, hey, I did like to do this as a creative outlet, or it was important for me then, but now I can let it go. So to me, when you're creating something, there's a spark, there's the building, there's the creation part, there's like the manifestation, and then what do you want to do with that? And so I feel that when you're really tuning into who you are and building all of those little pieces, that you're really building yourself.
See, now this is terrific. This is really, because these things that we talk about are very difficult to put into words. They're that profound. To explain this profound state of creating yourself, of being yourself. And the way Katrina is explaining it is so important. And, when I met her, it wasn't, actually, it was a couple of months ago that I actually approached Katrina, and I'm going to have her help me do some things in the, coming months, because I have some things that I want to do that I know there's a lid on somewhere. And sometimes you need somebody to lend a helping hand. And even if there's no lid on it, sometimes you need somebody to kind of go in and help take some things out, that you're too close to. And this freedom to be able to express ourselves, this freedom to be able to express ourselves even to ourselves, to discover things inside of a discovery experience is all creative. Discovering something is a creative process.
Yes, exactly. And that's why when people automatically want to say, well, it's like, well, I can't paint and I can't write and I can't do these things, it's such a limited view. And, for me personally, I really want to be the spokesperson for changing a lot of that. I know that I'm not the only one out there saying it, but it's so critical to do that part, because we all have those unique gifts. If everybody was an artist, who would do the accounting?
Right. Well, and
the rest wouldn't work.
No, and you need, and when I look at accounting, I think, I look at it as a creative process, because you've got to have creative problem solving, which is interesting because tonight I am facilitating an executive roundtable and for those of you that are local in Raleigh, Cary, Durham, Chapel Hill, at Mia Francesca at North Hills, at 6:30, 8:30, we have a gentleman by the name of Bruce Oberhart coming, who is a creative problem solver. He is a master scientist, and he has created all kinds of patents for all kinds of things, and a lot of them are for healthcare and the emergency rooms. And what he does is he isolates a problem, and then he creatively figures out how to solve that problem. That's why he has patents for hundreds of things. So he's developed a process called Dragonfly, and he is going to be at our event tonight, and he's going to be talking about this process. So if anybody's able to join us, please do. It should be great. So creative problem solving. Who's not doing that?
Right.
Right.
That's why I love that you brought that up too, because it's so much of the science really is, they're all creative. They're just creative in a different way. My partner Chuck, he is a software engineer. He is creating something from nothing, just like the people that paint a painting. He's got to write software that makes something work and develop it out of nothing, and that takes creativity and visioning skills.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, we all have to kind of take a look at how do we really define creativity for ourselves, and why are we making it so limited? And, Marilyn, just to add this one other thing, I love that you brought up the example of the project you were talking about, because when you show up in your full creative openness and I show up in mine, we can co-create some really cool stuff together. And that's what the whole goal of is. The more we can become ingrained in our own process and really realize like you're an evolving creative being, that allows you to show up and then attract other fun people to play with.
Well, that's funny because Chris says, she says, I wonder, do we attract creative people? Are we attracted to creative people because they are growing into their humanity, or because they are joyful, or a combination of both?
Oh, I think it's both. It's both. You're attracted to the fact that they can express themselves in a way that maybe that's not traditional to what's familiar to you, but they're also sharing a part of themselves. They're being honest. That clear creative honesty is not only attractive, but it's a beacon, and then it sets an example for other people to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time, and it's getting less and less, right? So.
Whoosh.
Oh my God, this has been fast, hasn't it? So,
Yeah.
You got another chance to call in, ask a question, 919-518-9773, or once again, you can connect with us on Skype Voice at Computers, that's at plural, the number 2K Voice, Computers 2K Voice. And you are more than welcome to connect with us and ask questions, because we'd love to have you. So, Katrina, tell everybody how they find you, and when they find you, what they will find, and why they should find you.
Oh.
Why should they look for you?
You can find me at creativekatrina.com. You can also catch me every other week on Skywire with Marilyn, which is always a fun panel and listening. And then I also have a partner for Hangouts on Air. We do a show called Thinking Out Loud, where essentially we're talking about, those things that maybe we don't always want to put out on the table, but topics where we can be our creative selves and come up with solutions. So those are the three places that you can find me. And the best part, I think, the joy that I get out of working with people is really being able to show them their true selves. Right? I love being able to collaborate with you and connect with you and show you the beauty of what you can create if you allow yourself to do it. So we can move past the fear. I can help you really kind of shift in the perceptions that you have and the blocks that you have, so that you can see things differently, because we don't always have that, and that's really what gets us stuck. And most importantly, I help people get unstuck.
Which, on some level, here again, we've attached a lot of negativity to a lot of things, and on some level, being stuck is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a stopping point. It's not like a place. It's hanging out. It's a stopping point. It's a place of questioning. It's not saying like I'm glued to this place and I'll never move. Being stuck is almost like finding that space of that shadow, or the darkness. It's a great place to learn and grow from. I'm gonna look at stuck a little differently from now on, and being an empath, and God knows, there's so many things that came out of today that I'm gonna take on for myself, going forward. And as far as the creativity and having somebody to help support you in that, and bringing out those layers, I think it's a really important thing, and I'm looking forward to working with Katrina along my path of writing my books. I am in the process of putting a survey together. We have it together, and it's going to be posted on Facebook, on my Breaking Free page on Facebook, on Marilyn Shannon on Facebook, and so forth. And so look for it. There'll be a link that you can fill out a survey. Of some very simple, it's just 4 or 5 questions. We want to know, what kind of shows do you want to listen to? Who do you want to hear? Do you have any suggestions? And, your age would be helpful, so that we can have an idea of what our audience here is looking for. And I am going to offer a half-hour complimentary coaching session for anybody that fills out the form. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be posted very, very shortly. So, Katrina.
Yes.
So, in the last few minutes that we actually have together,
Hmm.
you work with people in all areas of creativity, not just writing, right? It could be
That's correct.
anything. Is it so?
Hmm.
Is our creative self this is what goes on the same? It's just how we express it that varies.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to go back to the point that you were making before about being stuck or unstuck, I do think that there's a judgment around that. So people get to that stopping point and then they aren't sure how to move on from there. And then they just need a little guidance. They need some perception shifts to sort of help them see their situation in a different way.
Hmm.
And that's the same in any field of any kind of work. I think it's particularly important in leadership positions because if you're working with a team or
Right.
you're working with other folks, it's really important to understand how you want to show up and where you are so you can actually interact with people in a very effective way. So it doesn't have to be just in the arts, just in your personal business. It can be in anything that you're doing. And it's most important for anybody that really cares about showing up as a full version of themselves, right? If you want to do that, then creativity is a way to get you there.
So, anything we do,
Hmm.
we have access to our create with everything that we do. Creativity is is how you take your next step.
Hmm.
You're never going to take the step the same way twice.
Right.
You know, I mean, and you might follow a recipe for cooking, but isn't it fun to be able to just kind of be experimental a little bit and throw in something
Hmm.
different that you might not have thrown in before? So life is really meant to be creative. I don't
Hmm.
know what I'm going to say from 1 minute to the next. Can't you tell sometimes? But it's so fun to know
Hmm.
that
And
I
it's
don't
not a
have to know.
Yeah, and it's not a linear process. I mean, creativity is how you think, how you feel, what your past experiences are, what your passions are, what you want to do with your life. Like all of those things mesh together, and you get to play with different parts of it at different times. It's not this linear experience where you're saying, okay, today I'm going to focus on my shadow, and then tomorrow I'm going to focus on what I love. It's all of this mixed together in a non-linear way. But the more that you can show up and say, yes, this is clearly what I want, and this is the direction I'd like to go, it helps. And we
Right.
can't always do that on our own. It helps to have people to reflect that back to us or to just kind of get us through a stuck point once in a while, a place where we could shift our perception just a little bit and see the gold at the end of the rainbow.
Is creativity easy?
um, that's a good question. I think that people often assume like, hey, I have a natural talent for this, so that means I'm creative in this way. But I would say the overall process of creativity is for self-awareness. So yes, there's going to be parts of it that are easy and parts of it that are challenging. But you can certainly develop skills in an area. Like if you wanted to learn how to paint, you could learn how to do that. But you have to get comfortable with the process of not knowing how
Right.
already.
It's interesting because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, well, I'm creative. I'm creative. I mean, I'm creative in how I dress. I'm creative in, how
Hmm.
I process things. I remember driving to I was working as a teacher and I was like, what's my art? And it's not drawing. It's not
Hmm.
painting. It's not singing. It's not, and I always thought that was the only way. And then it
Hmm.
dawned on me that my mouth was my way of being creative and the way I interpret things, and working with people. So your creativity is going to show up in so many different ways and it can be in multiple ways. That's the
Hmm.
juicy part of life, right?
Yeah, yeah, and how you combine those things is the part of the creativity too. If someone said to me years ago that this is what I'd be doing, I would have thought they were insane. I went to school, I have a master's in journalism, so that's what I was going to do. I have an undergrad degree in business, that's what I was going to do. I had no idea how all of these different pieces and desires and experiences would roll together so that I could do the things that I'm doing right now. It's just there wasn't any way to ever envision it, and that's kind of the evolvement of the creative process as you live.
Right.
And like you said, understanding and knowing that, hey, maybe other people are doing these things, but that doesn't matter because what's important is that what do I enjoy doing? Like what comes natural to me? What are some skills I want to work on? Because there is a blend of that. It's not
Right.
just what's easy for you. It's definitely that combination of pulling all of them together and making a fun go of it.
And the thing about creativity is you just don't know. And you need
Hmm.
and that's why you need somebody like Katrina to help you figure it out. And it's 2 o'clock. our time, which means we've been on for an hour, which that has been a great hour. So I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this with us today. And it was just, I mean, we could keep on going, couldn't we? And we will.
Yeah.
We'll have her back. So I want to thank all of you also for being here and for enjoying this with us. And we will be here next week. If you have any questions at all, please. Got to have a comment. Yes, that's all of us clapping, right? If I can be of any service to you at all, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to write me to Marilyn@MarilynShannon.com. And remember to go to our Facebook page, Breaking Free, Marilyn Shannon, and take our survey. And with that, you'll get a half-hour complimentary session with me. And look for Katrina, because she's wonderful, and I'm going to be working with her too. And we're going to sign off now. So any final word, Katrina?
No, just I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for showing up today and listening. It's been fantastic. And Marilyn, thank you the most of all.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. And hold on tight. Don't go anywhere yet when we go off. But
okay.
I want to throw you an extra kiss. Okay, so with that, everybody, bye. Take care, and thank you for being here. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCBVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.